on the fact if there's any member of the public here who objects to being filmed, please advise us immediately and we'll ensure that you are not included in the filming. Mr. Bond, I think you're Mr. Bond, aren't you? Yeah. Yeah, that's very kind of you. Thank you very much indeed. Right, so we turn our attentions to agenda one item, and that is apologies for absence, please, Claire.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we've had apologies from Councillor Andy Neal.
Thank you, Claire. And is there a substitute in the room, please? Councillor Waldron. Thank you very much indeed. Now, turning our attention to the minutes of the meeting held on the 3rd of January 2024, are there any corrections or amendments required to the minutes, please, members? No? Okay. Could I have a proposer for the minutes, please? Councillor Whittam. And a seconder? Councillor London. So could I see a show of hands in favour of the unamended minutes of the last meeting? Over to you, Christine.
Thank you, Chair. That was the unanimous vote. The minutes are agreed.
Thank you, Christine. Now we just turn our attention now to item 4 on the agenda, which is the declarations of interest. And as usual, I'll read this paragraph for clarity. So members are reminded of their responsibility to declare any disclosable pecuniary interest, other registrable or non-registrable interests which they may have in any item of business on the agenda, and that should be no later than when the item is reached and when appropriate to leave the meeting prior to discussion and voting on the item. So are there any members here wishing to declare an interest? Councillor Sayer, please.
Thank you, Chair. I wish to declare a non-pecuniary interest in the first item, which is DC 221887 FUL, and I will refrain from the debate and the vote on this item.
I'm just going to check with our legal advisor, Christine, whether you should leave the room as well, in all fairness. Christine, please.
Yes, that would be the case, that you should leave the room when the discussion or the debate is taking place, and the nature of your interest, please.
I've previously commented on this as a resident.
Thank you.
Any more declarations of interest? Councillor Thorndyke.
Thank you, Chair. The doggy thing, I was adjudged to have spoken in favour against it last time, so I shall be opting out for the whole of the event this time. But I do have a little speech which will be read by hopefully the Democratic officer.
Yes.
Which is exactly the same as almost exactly the same as last time.
That's in your capacity as the ward member, which you're quite entitled to do. So thank you for that.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Chris. We then move on to item 5 on the agenda, which is Land Off the Street, Fornham All Saints. And I'd like to introduce James, who is the case officer. And James, you can begin your presentation when you're ready.
Hello. Oh, there we go. Yep. Good morning, members and members of the public. So this application, DC 221887 FUL, seeks planning permission for a maintenance access to serve All Saints Golf and Country Club. The access will serve the northwestern section of the golf course and be accessed off the street or the B1106 public highway. This application holds an officer recommendation of approval, which is contrary to the parish council and local ward members' objection. This application was presented at delegation panel on the 16th of January 2024, where it was directed to Development Control Committee for consideration by members due to the public interest in the proposal. As you may have seen, a late paper has been issued for this application. The late paper highlights 2 documents submitted by the agent on the 30th of January 2024. The first document is a highway statement produced by GH Bullard and Associates LLP. This document responds to concerns raised through consultation with the parish council and members of the public in terms of impact on highway safety. I will refer back to this document later within the presentation when we discuss the impact on highway safety. The second document is a supporting statement to provide more context regarding the justification behind this proposal. Just as a matter of clarification, it has been noted that the GIS location plan drawing uploaded within the committee pack shows the superseded location of the access. The plans I will show you within this presentation refer to the accurate amended location of the access, which, as you would have seen within the report, has been set further away from the Larksgate junction. So this slide just contains a snippet from Google Maps to provide some context as to where the access is proposed. The snippet shows the location of the access in relation to the wider golf course and the hotel itself, which you can see by a pink marker. You can also see a section of the B1106, which you can see here runs through both Farnham All Saints and Farnham St Genevieve. This slide contains the existing location plan, just to give you an idea of what the site looks like a bit more zoomed in, and I have roughly marked the location of the access with the red arrow. This slide shows the location of the access in more detail, particularly in relation to Acer Lodge, which is the bungalow located on the opposite side of the B1106 highway, and the Larkgate Junction, which is, if you can see that there, and Acer Lodge is here. The access will be constructed over a drainage ditch using an engineered brick retaining wall. Later within this presentation, I do have a photograph of course, the site, Acer Lodge, and the Larkgate Junction for context. This slide is a snippet from our mapping software, which just shows the site in relation to Farnham All Saints defined housing settlement boundary and the conservation area. You can see that the site is located outside of the settlement boundary and conservation area, albeit directly adjacent both of these boundaries. So from a planning policy perspective, this site would fall within the countryside. So this is the amended proposed block plan. This plan, the amended scheme, shows the access at a maximum width of 6.3 metres, which then reduces to 3 metres in width. It has a total length of approximately 5.8 metres. The plans show the footpath to be altered using tarmac, with the remaining depth of the access to be finishing Grasscrete, and I have a photograph of Grasscrete later in the presentation also. As I mentioned earlier, the access will be constructed over a drainage ditch by constructing an engineered brick wall. The brick wall is shown in the annotation to not exceed 600 millimetres above the height of the road level. You may have also seen within the bottom of the report, we've suggested a condition to secure the colour, type and general specifications of the brick wall. A 600 millimetre concrete drainage pipe will be installed through the wall. And you can see the majority of the 2.4 metre by 90 metre visibility splay within this drawing, and the location of some of the biodiversity enhancements here. So this plan shows the amended elevation drawing, which shows the proposed fencing and gates at a height of 1.25 metres and at a width of 3 metres. The gates are described as estate style to be powder coated black. Originally, the plans proposed to install matching metal gates and fencing at a height of 1.8 metres. We feel that this amendment is quite a significant improvement and more fitting with the rural character of the area. I also have a photograph of the existing fence later within the presentation. So the Highway Authority requested that a swept path plan be provided to show the largest possible vehicle that could use this access. So this slide contains two plans showing a swept path of a 2.3 metre wide by 7.17 metre long rigid axle vehicle manoeuvring into the site. So the plan on the left shows the vehicle reversing in and the plan on the right driving in a forward gear to the access. Concern has been raised regarding this plan. However, the Highway Authority have responded stating that they do not consider it would result in adverse risk to highway safety. The highway statement submitted as part of the late paper also discusses this drawing, which hopefully you have in your committee pack, that in practice, the vehicles using this access would primarily be tractors and lawnmowers that would be expected to maintain the golf course, and that they would be unlikely to need to traverse the road centre line to complete a turn in or out, and that this drawing is very much worst case scenario. So the next few slides show photographs of the site. So this photograph is taken directly opposite Acer Lodge where the access is proposed. So you can see the drainage ditch here, the footpath, the road, and you can almost see the fence if the lighting is okay. On these slides, I have put a red arrow to try and show roughly where the photograph has been taken from. So this photograph is taken from the bridge running over the River Lark, and I've tried to highlight the site within a red circle, and you can see where this photograph has been taken from. This photograph is taken to try and show the site in context with the shared access serving Acer Lodge and other residential properties, and approximately where the access is proposed. This this image is shown just a little bit forward of the Pound Meadow junction, showing roughly where the site is. Again, these images taken from Google Maps, just to show the views looking west and east from roughly where the access is proposed, to give you a view of what visibility would be like in person. And these are just some context photographs. So this is this is taken from Google Maps. Also, this is Acer Lodge on the left, and this is approximately where the access is proposed, roughly in line with this corner here. On the right is the Larkgate Junction. I've included this just as a bit of a reference for an idea of what an engineered brick wall running through the drainage ditch with a concrete pipe might look like. And then just a snippet from the Grasscrete brochure to give you an idea of what that would look like. So moving on to consultee comments. Highways have no objections to this application, subject to conditions which are set out within the report. And they have confirmed within an email that they do not consider that this proposal would result in an adverse risk to highway safety. The Conservation Officer does not object to the amended scheme following the submission of a heritage impact assessment, which demonstrates no harmful impacts upon the conservation area. The parish councils, I should say, and ward member Councillor Hopfensperger object to this application based on an impact upon residential amenity to Acer Lodge, the impact upon highway safety, the visual impacts upon the conservation area, and the justification for the application. At the time of writing the report, we had approximately 22 comments with 20 objections. I'm aware that we have received, I think, 2 more objections since then. The objections raised by members of the public also relate to the impact upon amenity of Acer Lodge, the impact upon highway safety, the impact upon the conservation area, and the need for the development. So this slide lists the considerations for this application. These are set out in more detail in the report, although I'll try to provide a summary of these considerations. So looking at the principle of development, well, the principle of development is considered acceptable in accordance with policies DM5 and 42. The access is proposed for maintenance purposes only to serve an existing business, and whilst the site does fall within the countryside from a planning policy perspective, it is not considered to harm the landscape heritage of the conservation area or adversely impact highway safety. Looking at the justification for the development, this is quite a brief overview. The applicant has stated that current access to this section of the golf course requires a convoluted route involving crossing several watercourses or travelling a greater distance around the golf course to avoid these, and that the new access would eliminate the need to cross the watercourses and assist with efficiency. Impact upon the character of the area. In a summarised format, the application site is rural, open and verdant in character. The superseded scheme proposed the access at a width of 9 metres and at a length of 20 metres with the matching 1.8 metre fence and gate. Officers felt that due to the design and scale of the access at that stage that it would have had a harmful impact upon the character of the area. So subsequently, and considering the council's requirement in accordance with policy DM2 to be positive and proactive in determining applications, the access has been considerably reduced in width to 6.3 metres and depth to 7.5. The access will also now not be entirely finished in tarmac, which is a visual improvement. The reduction in scale and changes in surfacing material have also significantly reduced the visual impact of the proposal, which officers now consider as more sympathetic to the rural character of the area and therefore satisfies DM2, DM5 and CS13. Looking at the impact upon the conservation area, as I've said before, the access has been considerably reduced in both width and depth, with the use of grass creep, in our opinion, providing a more natural appearance to the surfacing. A heritage impact assessment has also been submitted, which considers the impact of this development upon the conservation area and also includes some evidence of a historic access in this location that would have served the golf course, well, not as a golf course, but as an agricultural field before it changed use to a golf course. And the conservation officer no longer objects. So this application is considered to satisfy policy DM17. Impact upon amenity. Concern has been raised over the loss of privacy to Acer Lodge, which is the bungalow I showed earlier. The access has been located approximately 13.8 metres from Acer Lodge's front window. This access is located on the opposite side of the B1106 public highway and separated by a low brick wall. The front window of Acer Lodge already faces onto the public highway, and it is also set out with an report that we would expect a front elevation of a dwelling to benefit from less privacy than would say when compared to, say, a rear garden. On this basis, and considering the use as a maintenance access to serve an existing golf course, it is considered to satisfy policy DM2 and not considered to harm the residential amenity of Acer Lodge. Impact upon highway safety. So, as I said before, the Highway Authority do not object to this application, do not consider that it would result in an adverse risk to highway safety. The MPPF states that development should only be refused on highways grounds if there would be an unacceptable risk to highway safety. I have some of the concerns in a bit more detail raised by the Bornham All Saints Parish Council within the last consultation, which the highway statement in the late paper also seeks to address. To list these concerns, it includes that no traffic surveillance of the volume and speed of vehicles along the B1106 has been undertaken, that the proposal would result in additional traffic and affect highway safety in an area of heightened risk owing to the bend in the road on the west humped bridge and existing domestic access routes and prevalence of speeding vehicles. They question the type of vehicles entering the golf course, that the pinch points are not reflected within the drawing, that the B1106 is a dark stretch of road and that lighting would result in light pollution, and lastly that the development would impact highway safety of pedestrians, particularly those with mobility issues. So in response to these concerns, the highway statement states that the visibility display of the access provides 90 metres in either direction, which accounts for speeding up to 37 miles an hour, where this section of the highway is restricted to 30 miles an hour. The report also advises that there is no evidence of reported road injury accidents within the past 24 years of the application site, and that there is no evidence of an underlying road safety issue. The report states that generally tractors and lawnmowers would use this access, although, as I've set within the report, it could be used by a telehandler, forklift, 360 JCB and tractors and trailers as required. The report identifies that there are a number of traffic calming features along this highway to try and keep vehicle speeds to the 30-mile-an-hour limit. The pinch point referred to within the comments is a slight narrowing of the road, which reduces the width from approximately 6 metres to 5.5 metres. The report states that this will not affect the proposal. To confirm, there is no lighting proposed as part of this application, and the access drawing, or standard I should say, has been amended to provide a pedestrian visibility display, and which also seeks to prioritise pedestrian movements. So in the view of officers and considering the response from the Highway Authority and this submission in the late paper, the application is considered to satisfy policy DM2 and the MPPF in terms of its impact upon highway safety. Rather briefly on ecology, whilst officers felt that the scale of development was not significant, we still felt there was a potential to have an ecological impact. The applicant has provided an ecology report which identifies no adverse ecological impacts, and as I showed earlier, we also have some biodiversity enhancements proposed in the form of bird and bat boxes. So on to the last slide, and to conclude, the access is being considerably reduced in width and depth with an improved style of gates and surfacing material. There are no objections from either the Conservation Officer or Highway Authority. The proposal will be restricted by a condition to be used for maintenance purposes only. The development is proposed to be constructed in accordance with highway safety standards even, and we have identified no adverse impacts upon ecology. So the application is therefore recommended for approval in accordance with the Joint Development Management Plan, St Edmundsbury Core Strategy and the updated MPPF. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, James. I just want to go through the list of public speakers. We've got Malcolm Hancock, who is an objector, and he's been allocated 1 minute, but that's a statement which Claire, our Democratic Services Officer, will read out on his behalf. Then we have Chris Bond. As I understand it, Chris, you're speaking as a collective of Darren, Watson and Jane Stewart, so you're speaking on behalf of the three of you. You've been allocated 2 minutes. Councillor Martin Loveridge, you're the chair of the Parish Council.
Chair of the Fornham All Saints Parish Council. I'm also representing the Fornham St Martin cum Genevieve Parish Council. Okay,
thanks for clarifying that. You've got 3 minutes for that slot. Councillor Becky Hofsenberger, a familiar figure at these meetings, so you know exactly what you've got, which is 3 minutes. And then we've got Mark Knight, the agent. Hello, Mark. And you've got 3 minutes on behalf of the applicant. So I'm going to start here with Claire, who's reading a statement, and which has been allotted 1 minute. Over to you, Claire.
Thank you, Chair. My wife and I have lived at Acer Lodge, the street, Fornham All Saints, for the past 13 years. The street is a very busy road, particularly so on weekdays between the hours of 7:30 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. and from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. The pinch point, a traffic calming measure, which has not been noted in the application, is in the road directly outside our property and often causes a hold-up of traffic if two heavy vehicles are travelling in opposite directions simultaneously. There is a constant flow of heavy traffic on the said road during the day, particularly vehicles travelling to and from nearby Anglian waterworks, as well as heavy agricultural machinery moving from farm to farm. Vehicles using the proposed new entrance, which is very near to the pinch point, I would estimate between 15 and 20 metres, will only add to the existing problems. On a personal note, my main concern is the positioning of the proposed new entrance to the golf course, which is to be directly opposite the window of the main sitting room of our bungalow. I have no legal right to a view of the golf course, i.e. if a fence or trees were to be put up, I could not complain. As far as I'm aware, the golf course has no legal right to look into private property, i.e. our bungalow. I regard this as an invasion into the privacy of our home. I therefore strongly oppose this application.
Thank you very much indeed, Claire. Right. Chris, over to you.
Good morning. I'm Chris Bond, and I'm grateful to be able to register objection on behalf of several local residents. Our overarching concern is the proposal's range of negative impacts, yet for no benefit to the community. Meanwhile, its justification for maintenance access is entirely unfounded. This has not been required for the last 40 years, whilst access has also recently been enhanced by the internal river bridge upgrade and new access to the site in the southwest corner. Essential temporary access can also be granted, as it was when the poplar trees were removed recently. The proposal impacts negatively on the village, the conservation area and residential amenity through imposition of new brick walls in a green corridor, purporting to reinstate an old agricultural entrance, yet for more intensive use, increasing local disruption, including for Acer Lodge, of course, with mental health compounding issues and well-being issues for the residents adjacent. It will also compound traffic issues in an already challenging area. It is ambiguous on the expected vehicle sizes, number and frequencies, but in all cases, turning vehicles will disrupt traffic flow and increase risk. The plan to routinely reverse vehicles in from the westbound carriageway, following the Conservation Officer's refusal of the wide entrance, quite rightly, is wholly unsafe and has not been properly assessed. Nighttime risks will increase since street lighting is prohibited in this area, and we believe the mitigations prescribed by the Highways Department do not account adequately for the risks above. Finally, the unfounded justification for the application is bound to raise concerns that it is actually linked to future development, as we have seen in the development of lodges in the southwest corner of the site. In all the lack of a transparent plan for ongoing development of the course, this is now the 18th separate planning application over 4 years, is unhelpful to the review of this application, wider planning considerations, and to community understanding and cohesion. I thank the committee for your time.
I interrupted you just as you were coming to your final sentence. That's fine. Thank you very much indeed. Right, we now turn to Martin as the...
Mr. Chairman.
Can you hear me? Yes. Mr. Chairman, I'm Martin Loveridge, Chair of the Farnham All Saints Parish Council. I'm representing both affected parish councils, having worked closely with Farnham St Martin cum Genevieve on the production of this statement. For the record, having consulted widely with parishioners of all three parishes, we strongly object to this application. The requirement. The applicant asserts that to get to this area there is a convoluted route crossing several watercourses. He further posits that there is an increase in access requirement to tend to new planting. He provides meagre benefits in terms of mileage and time. Our objections. There are two main issues. Firstly, visual impact and conservation. The view across the golf course is a quintessential aspect of both villages, as it is one of the few green spaces left between us and Bury St Edmunds and provides a view of open and undisturbed countryside. The report states that the plan satisfies paragraph 202 of the NPPF, DM25 1742 and CS13. We disagree vehemently. In our opinion, it does not. To use the heritage impact assessment argument that there was a farm entrance here many years ago is both risible and irrelevant. Secondly, impact on the highway. It's been mooted that there have been no reported accidents on this stretch of road in 24 years. True, but in reality there have been a number of accidents, the last being only last October. It was serious but not reportable. Mr. Chairman, we have local knowledge of this stretch of road. It is as speed as paradise. The police know this, and it is already dangerous. The vehicle entrance is designed as a DM03 domestic vehicle entrance. The applicant has shown on plans a huge rigid axle vehicle and listed in the submissions telehandlers, forklifts, tractors and trailers, and even a 360 JCB mini digger. To the layman, these do not appear very domestic. All of the highway decisions appear to have been made with tabletop assumptions, whereas the maintenance entrance on the Mildenhall Road, which has now de facto become a formal entrance to 15 park lodges, needed traffic surveys. We therefore do not consider that DM2 and paragraph 115 of the NPPF have been satisfied. In sum, the requirement is, in our opinion, weak. There are excellent bridges over the watercourses, and the golf course has been adequately maintained for over 30 years. There is also the additional entrance, as previously mentioned. There seems to be no intrinsic need for this access for the stated purpose. We clearly can't give a full risk-benefit analysis on this application in 3 minutes. However, we consider that there will be a major impact on our enjoyment of the amenity and that the risk to road users and pedestrians will be significantly increased. This is set against a marginal gain for the applicant as currently stated. I wish to end by saying that we, the people that live here on a daily basis, know the impact that this application will have on us. I therefore reiterate our strong objection to this application. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the DCC.
And thank you, Martin. Thank you very much indeed. So, Councillor Becky Hofstenberger, as ward member, you have 3 minutes.
Members of the committee, I'm here with my fellow ward member, Sarah Broughton, to represent the views of the residents and indeed both parish councils, some who are here today and also those who can't be here today due to work commitments. Residents have concerns with regards to the application due to the following main reasons: adverse impact on the amenity, impact on highway safety, adverse effects on the conservation area, and a general question over the requirements of the entrance. With regards to the impact on highway safety, the B1106, where the proposed entrance is located, is a busy road, especially at peak times. So much so that the parish council have already tried to deploy speed indicator devices. The bridge has an environmental weight restriction, and the parish has a lorry watch in place due to the amount of traffic in the area. Residents in the vicinity have witnessed accidents caused by cars turning into one of the already 4 access roads along this short section, being hit in the back by cars driving too fast and too close. Adding another entrance has the potential to increase this scenario. Residents living along this stretch of road are having to ingress and access their properties due to the narrowing of the road, and the bollards that are in situ have real problems. The same would apply for any other additional entrances along this stretch of road. There are also bends either side of the proposed entrance, and it is in close proximity to a brow of a small hill. The heritage statement refers to a reinstatement of a farmyard entrance from a map dated 1839, where there is also an entrance to a field before it's converted into a golf course. One might suggest that road conditions and traffic were slightly different 200 years ago, and therefore historical precedent has hardly been set. The proposed entrance sits abutting a conservation area. Currently, the area has provided an invaluable green space between the parishes of Farnham and Bury St Edmunds. While it is accepted that trees have been removed and a planting scheme is in place, it is considered that an entrance will further detract from the uninterrupted countryside that exists there. I will just touch on need. Whilst I appreciate that this may not be a material planning reason to object to, it is cited that the need to maintain this area is to maintain this area of the golf course, which is not easily accessible. However, significant work has already been undertaken in this area without a proposed new entrance, and there's also a bridge which has been improved, which already carries maintenance traffic for this side of the golf course. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Becky. And now we turn our attention finally to Mark, please, the agent for the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councillors, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to speak regarding the application. I'd like to take a moment to explain how this application came about. In recent years, with much of the site sitting within a recognised floodplain, prolonged periods of wet weather made it increasingly more difficult to access the western part of the golf course. This fact was never more relevant when 2.5 years ago, one of the existing popular trees fell onto a nearby bus stop in the street, which some of you may be aware. Thankfully, nobody was hurt, but a subsequent survey of the trees highlighted many in an equally dangerous condition. With the risk identified, permission was obtained for their immediate removal. However, at the time of the work to be carried out, waterlogged ground conditions meant it was impossible to reach that tree line. A temporary access was hastily and rather crudely created to gain access onto the site, not unsurprisingly attracting the attention of the Suffolk County Highways Department. Acknowledging the need, temporary access for a short period of time was suggested at a meeting, and at that same meeting, with the applicant and the highways officer, a permanent maintenance access was suggested to be applied for. It was that advice which brings us to where we are today. In seeking approval for the permanent maintenance access, we worked closely with officers and consultees. We've listened to neighbours' observations and presented a scheme that addresses those concerns. The historic study undertaken of the area records the existence of an access onto the street, from the street, in a similar location. And whilst we acknowledge land use has changed over the years, this does evidence the access in the location that has historic context. Regarding the proposed access, we would possibly consider this a restatement now. A number of revisions have been made to the original presented scheme. The overall size of the access has been reduced, its appearance readdressed to be more sympathetic with its immediate surroundings. The style of the fence and gates is more in keeping with a rural setting. The hard standing is now grasscrete, which gives the appearance of a grass verge. Pedestrian safety has been addressed by adopting standard highway access that prioritise footpath users, and we moved the access away, as you've heard, from Larks Gate to minimise vehicle collisions. In conclusion, with the site sitting within the floodplain, the effects of climate change, the impact of Marham Park development, less than 1% of the combined population of the parishes raising rejection, and the ability to restock some 200 trees and their ongoing maintenance of the immediate site, we hope you can have a better appreciation of the applicant's need for the maintenance access, and will support the recommendations of the officers for approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Mark. Right, we move to the committee discussion. Before we do so, Ben, could I just ask you just to remind members how to use the microphones? Would you mind, please?
Amanda invites you to speak.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Councillor Thorndyke then, please.
Thank you, Chair. Well, as a frequent user of that piece of road, indeed only last night, I had the opportunity of driving along fairly slowly. There was not a lot about. I just wonder why. There's obviously a great deal of public concern with this, and some of it from their side I think is justified. I don't know from the user of the site how much they're actually going to gain, but there is a definite concern there, and I think there is definite cause for concern with slow-moving traffic. We're told will be using the access, both in and out, turning across the existing flow, which is fairly heavy at the best of times. I just wonder why we haven't got a site visit lined up, so I would like to propose a site visit.
Okay, thank you. Yes. I'll continue with the member discussion. I'll come back onto that point, if I may, Councillor. Councillor Waldron, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to know how the applicant proposes to stop public access, people driving on their parking, going for a wander in the golf course, and can they assure us that there is no public access, it's only for maintenance vehicles? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Waldron. Councillor Mike Chester, can you put your mic off, please, Councillor Waldron? Well done. Yeah, Councillor Mike Chester, please. Mike, press your microphone again. That's it. You're back.
We have liftoff.
We can hear you.
Chair.
We can now hear you clearly.
Okay. Both the ward member and the parish council chairman made powerful statements. Given the number of objections, I've taken this on board. I think as part of the officer presentation, it would have been beneficial for this committee to have included what the existing track is and how this new proposal would benefit this convoluted route which has been mooted about, which wasn't presented to this committee. So I think that would have been beneficial. Based on what's gone before us and Councillor Thorndyke's proposal for deferment based on a site visit, should that be confirmed by this council, I'd be happy to second that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Chester. Again, I'll just come back to that when I've heard from other members, if I may. But that's certainly a proposal that I've noted. Councillor Ball, please. No. Just press it again, Carol, and keep your fingers away from the button now.
Sorry. I'll get it one day. What we don't really understand is how often they would be accessing this for maintenance. I think that's quite critical. Also, I do think there is a point, although we've heard that there is now a bridge in place, with the climate change and the heavy rains, it may be that access across the course is getting quite difficult. With regard to having the emergency access, I mean, to create this gateway just in case they have trees fall down again does seem a bit overkill. But how quickly can you get temporary access to deal with a situation like that? So I think it's quite difficult. But I think the important thing is how often are they going to be putting maintenance vehicles in there? They must have a routine, and that's a figure we're not being told. Thank you. Do I press it again? Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Ball. Councillor Hood, please. No, you turn it off.
Okay, thank you. I always think that we need to listen very carefully to parish councils, to ward members, and it's very clear that there is a huge objection to this proposal. I think it ill behooves us to ignore local residents. Regarding policy DM5, it states that we need to ensure that development for economic growth and expansion within the countryside should not harm the character and appearance of the area. And we've heard that it does. And I haven't heard any reasons that make me believe that we should be approving this with all the evidence we've had. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hood. Now, Councillor Glossop.
Thank you, Chair. Several things. The applicant said that Suffolk County Council had advised them to apply for another access. We didn't hear that in the officer's report, I don't think, unless I missed it. I think the reasons for wanting the access are very lightweight, as far as what I've heard. The other thing that does concern me, and you might say I shouldn't be saying this, but I'm going to, we've had so many applications now from this organisation, and I'm not sure that the applicant is consulting with the residents enough, and we often have this problem. So I would like to know how much consultation has been done with the residents and the parish councils, because I'm sure we could get over some of these problems, and it would help us possibly in the future with this site. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. You're quite right. The history is not relevant. This stands on its own merits, but the consultation is a question that I think needs to be addressed. Councillor London, please.
Thank you, Chair. I have three sort of comments on this, which is the first one of which is the historical reinstatement of a access from 200 years ago. I'd just like to get clarification from officers whether there being an access point there 200 years ago is in any way a material consideration, or whether that is something that we should be disregarding. Similarly, on a similar note, how convoluted or not the internal golf course maintenance pathways are. I don't believe those are material to this particular application. So again, I would like guidance as to whether any difficulties inside the site should be taken into consideration. And finally, during the chairman's brief on Monday, which is for the benefit of everyone watching, is effectively the dress rehearsal for this. I had a question, and I will repeat it now with the answer that I was given at the time so that everyone has the same information that I have, which is that I was asking whether it was possible to police the number of vehicle movements and get an understanding of the number of vehicle movements on and off the site. And I don't believe, or the answer was that we don't believe that's something that would be possible for us to police. And with that in mind, I'm wondering what our proposal is for how the restricted condition for maintenance purposes only will be addressed, and what would happen if we had a situation where this went forwards and then was being used for other purposes, what our recourse would be at that point. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor London. OK, so I'm just going to go back now because it came quite early in the debate. Councillor Thorndyke, you are proposing a deferral and a site visit. Defer it. And Councillor Chester, you are happy to second that, yes? OK, I've noted that. Right, shall we go to officers, because I've got no other members wishing to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The first one I'd noted is that Councillor Waldron had a query about how could the access be prevented from being used by the public. It's a gated access, but the actual control of how that would be used would be down to how the owners manage it. Clearly, as it's gated, it could be lockable. But that's not material to our consideration of the application. It does link, though, to the question that Councillor London asked about how do we ensure we can enforce the condition about it being used for maintenance purposes only. And that would be, if it was being used for other purposes, our sanction would be either a breach of condition or formal enforcement notice if that was being continually breached. Councillor Bull asked about how often the access would be used. We don't have that information, but it's for maintenance purposes, so we're not expecting that it would be every day, but we wouldn't condition, and that links to Councillor London's other question about the number of vehicles that may use it. That has not, we don't have a figure for how often it would be used. There's a couple of comments that were made about the justification or the reasons for the access, also linked to this question of the convoluted route to get to the site at the moment. That's part of the reasoning that the applicants have given for wanting this maintenance access in this location. But from a planning point of view, we need to consider the planning merits of the proposals as opposed to the reason for the access. On the basis of what's been applied for, which is a maintenance access, the Highways Authority have not objected on that basis. Councillor Glossop, this is sort of linked to that last statement I've made about need. Certainly as an officer, I wasn't aware that the County Council may have recommended this access be put in as a result of other conversations that the applicants had. But again, whether or not that was the case, it's not relevant to the consideration of the application before us now. And community consultation, obviously through the planning application, we consult with near neighbours and the parish council. We do, through our statement of community involvement, always encourage applicants to engage with the community or nearby neighbours prior to putting applications in, and that's something that we would always encourage on any site. So that is something that we would actively encourage. And last question, Councillor London, you asked a question about how relevant is the statement about the historical access. It was relevant in as much as because the site immediately adjoins a conservation area, we need to consider the impact of the proposals on the conservation area, and parcel of that would be the historical assessment of what may have been on the site previously. So certainly not in terms of any highway safety implications, but in terms of heritage impacts, it's relevant in as much as I've explained. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Rachel. Okay. Councillor Miller-Jones, please.
Thank you. I don't really understand if we don't have any information on sort of the number of vehicles, the frequency of access, what the access might be used for. I mean, obviously maintenance, but as in, what exactly does that entail? Is that a kind of, it could be an everyday thing that they say they need to maintain things. How is it that highways can say that they don't have a problem with it if they haven't been given any information about how much this access is going to be used? Because surely that's relevant. I mean, if it was an access that was being used all day, every day, perhaps they would have a problem. So I don't understand how they can have a conclusion without having that information. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Miller-Jones. Councillor David Smith, please.
Yeah, thank you. If I heard Rachel correctly, she said the reason for the entrance is not of consideration. It's just a planning application on the entrance itself. In that case, the effect on the impact on the residents is the overriding factor here, surely. So I don't see how I can support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor David Smith. Councillor Ian Holder, please.
Yes, thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Chair. I may be the only dissenting voice amongst all my friends and probably get into trouble from my colleagues sitting opposite and the members of the public. But I was listening carefully to this, and I think the objectors are making a huge meal out of a tiny portion. I agree that this road is busy. When I moved down here and actually used this golf club, it was a very quiet area. The golf club was obviously in different ownership. It was about 40.
Councillor Holder, sorry, can you just clarify, are you a current member of the golf club or were you a member of
Absolutely not. I haven't been a member of that golf club for 30 years, I should think. But I did play the hole that this gate is going into, and it's one of the worst on the course, with a pond if you're a bit short and a river if you're a bit long. But that's by the by. The mention has been made of the applicant making many applications on this site or his site, some of which have been completely contentious. I'll just hold that this was a failing business many years ago and has been taken over and obviously enhanced. And all businesses have to move on. Hence the lodges that were put in and the extensions to the clubhouse, etc. We've been told by our officer that we should be looking at the application in the round, and the applicant has got every right to make such an application anyway. All the people, apart from the parish council and the ward member, the people we have to consult with, have said they've no objections. The highways said they've got no objections. I can see the point of people wanting to know how many movements are going to be, but realistically, how many are there going to be? Very, very few to mow the grass. Disturbance will be from mowing the grass and strimming around the rough edges of the ponds and the river and that sort of thing. So noise is going to be emanating from that part of the golf course when they are doing their maintenance. Nobody asks the question of our many farmers in the area, how often are you going to use your farm access to get your vehicles on there for doing whatever job the season dictates. So I can't see what the problem is here. There is a pinch point, as been said. There's a bus stop either side of this road, very close to it, which actually, everybody uses this road behind a bus, knows they can't really overtake when the bus has stopped at the bus stop, which is why I think the road, even though it is 30, is actually quite a slow road. I'd leave it there, but we have had recommendation for deferment and a site visit. I'm just asked the question, what will we achieve from a site visit? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Holder. And listen, I do realise how emotional this is. I'd just like you maybe to just turn it down a notch, because it's quite off-putting when you burst into laughter, but please take that in the spirit it's intended. Right, Councillor Mel May White, please.
Thank you, Chairman. One of the aspects we haven't really discussed is the privacy aspect on the lodge opposite. And that is one of the reasons why I would quite like to have a site visit, just to have a look from their aspect as to the effect of this entrance. So I would support the site visit. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Mel May White. Councillor London, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think that it boils down to exactly what this entrance is going to be used for and how heavily and by what vehicles. I think there is a general concern that it may be a thin end of the wedge and that this may then lead to further development in the area. I cannot, with the current application, determine in my mind exactly how this will be used. And I am concerned that the restrictions that are being imposed will not preclude the entrance's use at the more extreme, worrisome end of that spectrum. And with that in mind, I am leaning towards refusing this application.
Thank you, Councillor London. I think because we've got a substantive motion for a site visit to lead, which leads to a deferral. We'll come back to that if that motion fails. Right, I've got no members on my screen, so are there any responses required from officers?
I think the only other point that I would make, just in terms of that question about frequency, is my understanding is that the Highways Authority would have looked at this as a worst case scenario, which is the normal way that they would assess proposals. But I've nothing more to add other than that. Thank you, Chair.
I was just about to test the motion, but Councillor Thorndyke, please.
Yeah, just a quickie. The proposal for this is for an access into All Saints Golf and Country Club. No restrictions, no nothing. It's what it says on here is the proposal, which leads me to the third bullet point, which says we'll have a condition. But I've read through the conditions and I can't find anything in there that relates to what the traffic will be restricted to. Is there anything? Am I missing something?
I've got Carol Bull, Councillor Bull. Yeah, officers will come back, but I've got Councillor Bull and Councillor Miller-Jones in that order. Councillor Bull, please.
Yeah, sorry. Very quickly. I mean, as somebody actually commented, they've managed to maintain this part of the golf course for 40 years without any problems. And it seems to me the only reason that it's become an issue is because of the problem with the trees. And that's a one-off issue. And I think maybe, as Councillor Hood said, we should be listening to the residents who know the area and have concern about the impact. And I don't think there's an absolute necessity for this, and why we should change it. And I'm not sure I would support approval.
Thank you, Councillor Bull. That's sort of a general tone, I think, of the committee to date. Councillor Miller-Jones, please.
Yeah, hi. Just a comment on the sort of request for a site visit. I just wonder if it would be possible for sort of my fellow members to kind of request this from officers in advance when we receive the papers, because I'm very conscious of all the people who've taken time off work, travelled here, and I don't know that it's appropriate to wait until now to say we need more information. That's all. Thank you.
Just to explain, it came to delegation panel. And at that point, the delegation panel determined whether a site visit, with the support or not of officers, whether there's a site visit required. The delegation panel determined on this instance there wasn't a requirement. Okay.
members here, when they receive the papers, I feel like that might be the time to ask, and then perhaps this could be postponed rather than waiting till everybody's come here.
Can we take that offline later? Thank you. Right, there's no members wishing to speak, so let's just test out one clarification. Oh yes, one clarification. I do apologise.
Thank you, Chair. It's Councillor Thorndike asked about, was there a condition limiting numbers? There isn't a condition limiting numbers of use of the access, but condition 4 does restrict the use of the access to maintenance purposes. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Rachel. Right, it's been proposed for, however we got there, for a deferral to include a site visit before it comes back to the committee by Councillor Thorndike, seconded by Councillor Chester. Can I see a show of hands in favour of that motion, please? And those against that motion, please. Okay, over to you, Christine.
Thank you, Chair. So that's 8 in favour and 7 against. So the motion is carried and the application is deferred for a site visit.
Thank you very much indeed. You're going to get Councillor Sayer, yes? At this point, does anyone need a comfort break? No. Right, we're going to begin the application for land off Fordham Road, Freckenham. And I'd ask Amy to begin her presentation when she is ready. Thank you.
Good morning, members. We've got this application here at land off Fordham Road in Freckenham, which is for the change of use of an agricultural field to an enclosed field for dog training, exercising and associated access and parking. This is before the committee following members being minded to approve the application on the 3rd of January committee, contrary to the officer recommendation or refusal. The decision-making protocol was invoked and a risk assessment has been carried out. The risk assessment report sets out the potential risks that may arise should planning permission be approved. In addition, the risk assessment has allowed for clarity to be sought and provided by the applicant on queries raised during the January committee, and has also allowed for appropriate conditions to be drafted should permission be granted by members. I'd like to draw members' attention to the late paper, which has removed 2 of the conditions which were listed in the risk assessment, those relating to the submission of fence details and the submission of biodiversity enhancement measures, neither of which are now considered necessary. So the presentation is largely the same as last time, with a few amendments, so I'll just run through that now. So we've got the location plan here outlining the site in red. The application site is outside the settlement boundary of Freckenham, in land designated as countryside. We have had a number of amendments from the original proposal. So this was the original proposal with the fence around the boundary. We had a parking and area and also a holding area. We then received these amended plans, which were presented at the last committee in January, which proposed less parking and landscaping to the northwest and southern boundary. And then following the January committee, we have received this amended plan, which now shows hedge planting along the western boundary as well as the north, south and eastern boundaries. We have also had some clarification in terms of the hedging that is proposed. So it's been confirmed that it would be a native species hedge made up of hornbeam and beech planted in 2 straight rows, set 335 millimetres apart and staggered at a density of 6 plants per linear metre. It's also been confirmed that the plants are to be open ground stock, 120 millimetre to 1.2 metre to 1.5 metre high. The beech's details growing between 400 to 600 mil a year and the hornbeam between 200 to 400 mil a year. The applicant has confirmed that they are not proposing any external lighting for the scheme, with the use only taking place during daylight hours with a maximum hours of 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. depending on the time of year. If the application were to be approved, conditions can be added to the permission controlling the hours of use on the site, which is condition 4 within the late paper, as well as not allowing any external lighting to be installed without planning permission being sought, which is condition 5 within the late paper. The applicant has also explained that the reference to the field being used for training refers to obedience training, not the training of dogs over fixed equipment or obstacles. Therefore, the only structures proposed above ground within the application site are the 7 poo bins and the perimeter fence. And as previously advised in the January committee, there would be a limit of 6 dogs and 2 owners on the field at any one time, which could be controlled via a condition, which is condition 4 within the late paper. So here we have the proposed elevation and a photograph of an example of the fence proposed around the perimeter. The secure dog-proof fencing proposed is manufactured by Clipex. It would measure 1.8 metres in height with steel posts strainer posts and rectangular wire netting between the posts. Following the January committee, the applicant investigated whether there would be a possibility of purchasing the fence with a coloured finish, such as green, to blend in with the landscape, as members asked if this was an option. However, it is only available in a galvanised finish. So the post, strainer post, wire netting proposed would all be galvanised and would be in a dull grey silver colour, as shown on the photograph on the screen. Examples of other dog training facilities in West Suffolk have been provided by the applicant, with the galvanised wire fencing, which is shown in the photographs, albeit the fence posts in these examples are timber and the fence proposed for the development have galvanised posts instead. Here we've just got an aerial image of the application site, and then I'm going to go through some of the photographs which were showed last time, as well as a video of the site. So we've got a view here of the site from the edge of Freckenham looking west. We've got a view of the application site from the edge of Freckenham looking to the west again. A view here of the fields opposite, looking southwest. And this is the application site viewed from Fordham Road, looking northwest. This has been taken from basically next to the field, looking northeast. And this is roughly where the parking, hard standing and access is proposed within the field. And we've got a view looking towards Freckenham, so that's to the, I guess not southeast, that would be northeast. And then again, this is just from further along Fordham Road, looking towards the application site. And then we've got a video of the site here. So we are now looking at the application site, moving towards the east, then looking towards Freckenham, moving towards Fordham Road. And then I've got my back towards the field now. And then the field is just on the right. As was advised last time, the landscape officer stated that the addition of the hedging and the trees proposed would benefit ecology, but the proposed amendment should be refused on the basis that the local landscape character would be adversely affected by the proposed change of use to a dog field in this location, with the associated parking, access and fencing, as well as the paraphernalia within the site, so that's the poo bins, and the addition of landscaping not being characteristic of the surrounding area. Suffolk County Council Highway Authority raised no objection to the application following the submission of amended plans. They have suggested conditions which have been listed in the risk assessment and also the late paper. The private sector housing and environment team did raise some concerns about the noise impact as a result of the proposed use, however, did advise that by controlling the hours of use of the site and limiting the number of dogs at any one time, then this would be acceptable, and those are conditions which have been listed in the risk assessment and late paper. Councillor Taylor advised that they had no objection to the application and supported it, advising that the land would not be changed in any way and only used for dogs to run and play. The fence is by no means an eyesore, and he believed would blend in with the other fencing along the road, and the project would seem an excellent use of the land that would not be used for crops. Freckenham Parish Council did not submit any formal comments with the application. However, a letter of support was submitted with the application, which was from Freckenham Parish Council. And we did receive a third-party representation from a resident in Worlington, raising an objection to the proposal due to concerns regarding highway safety, noise pollution, the requirement, basically the need for such a facility, and whether the site is within a greenbelt area and how the proposed development may impact on neighbouring businesses which are similar. So moving on to the planning balance. The benefits of the proposal: there is some limited economic and social benefit from a new rural enterprise, and some limited ecological benefit from the addition of new hedging and trees. And then the disbenefits: officers consider there to be a significant adverse impact to the rural landscape character due to the addition of the fencing, hard standing, access, car parking, poo bins, and the planting of the hedging and trees in what is currently an open and flat landscape. So, notwithstanding the clarifications and revisions sought following the January meeting, for the reasons outlined within the risk assessment report and the original committee report, officers consider that the development would be harmful to the landscape character of the area, and that there are insufficient benefits to outweigh this harm, which would be contrary to both local and national policies. The officer recommendation therefore remains one of refusal. However, as outlined in the risk assessment, the landscape impacts and the degree to which these are harmful and offend the relevant policies of the development plan are a subjective judgment. Therefore, the risks granting planning permission in this case are on the lower end of the scale. So in coming to your decision, should you be minded to recommend approval, it must be clearly identified how you consider the proposal complies with the development plan and the reasons for reaching your decision. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Amy. We've got, well, the two slots are filled. Councillor David Taylor is going to speak in his role as ward member. And then we've got Andrew Fleet and Tracy Canham. You're going to be sharing the 3 minutes as the applicant. Who's going first, just to help me? Tracy. Okay, thank you very much. So, excuse me, I've got a croaky voice. Councillor Taylor, David, it's over to you for 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Tracy reached out to me latter part of last year, and I've heard today an awful lot where we should listen to our parishes, and I got some good advice when I became a councillor about listening to my parish. From this, I did take a visit last year and just overheard Councillor Julia Wakelham here. Her comment when she saw the video a moment ago was, "Gosh, isn't it bleak?" And that's exactly what I saw, the latter part of last year. And that's why when I looked into it, I really did think, well, whenever you put a fence up, it cannot ever just be enhancing an area, but we don't stop putting fences up at any time. And so looking at this bleak area and also where we can actually have people can take their dogs. I'm an owner of a Great Dane, and I know mine is under control, but people do get nervous about taking their dogs, and they want an area. There are a number of these places now working quite well. And so I just do find it slightly strange that looking as you're coming into Freckenham, as a resident as well of the area, this wouldn't offend me in any way, shape or form. So with that, Chair, I'm about done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Right, Tracy, you and Andrew were sharing the 3 minutes. I'll leave it entirely up to you how you split it.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for your time. We're here today to make sure that we have addressed all the questions raised from the previous meeting. As stated, there will be no lighting or training equipment in the field, and hours of use will be between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. Monday to Sunday. We have continually listened to planning officers' feedback, and our initial LVIA stated the proposal represents lightweight development with negligible to no effects on the wider landscapes or view. In conclusion, there were no overriding landscape or visual effects which should prevent the development on site as proposed. The beech hedging proposed is detailed as growing between 400 and 600 millimetres per year, and the hornbeam 200 to 400 millimetres. So over the course of 12 to 18 months, the hedge will be the height of the fence. In view of the above, security of the fencing is our main priority, and we are confident that the galvanised dull grey wire will be concealed just as shown at the other Suffolk dog field. The hedges and trees proposed to screen the agricultural fencing will not only store carbon, but will also support crop pollinators and create a habitat for animals, allowing wildlife to thrive. The Clipex fencing has a 30-year lifespan and is completely recyclable. No need for heavy machinery or operators. Transportation and fuel costs are less, so better for the environment. Biodiversity enhancement measures consist of 500 metres of established hedgerows, 7 native tree species, a wildflower area and 1.4 hectares of grass, more than enough to ensure the biodiversity enhancement commensurate with the scale of the development. As per the Environmental Health Officer's recommendations, there will be no paraphernalia in the field and the poo bins will be concealed by the hedge. We strongly feel that our proposal is an opportunity to provide an excellent, well-needed facility to Freckenham and the surrounding villages and support the local dog-friendly public house in the village. Thank you very much for your time today.
Chairman, I don't need to really say very much at all. Thank you very much.
I thought you might say that, actually. Right, members, over to the committee. Councillor Mel Maywhite, please.
Oh, thank you, Chairman. I think, like many of us, we've been a little bit torn on this one, and I have flip-flopped, I'm afraid, which isn't usual for me in some ways. But when we went on the site visit, I mean, it is such an open area. This is going to look extraordinary, really, and out of character, so I'm absolutely with the officers on that. But on the other hand, I have every sympathy that this is an innovative new business and that we should be giving people a chance. I happened to drive through the country this last weekend, and actually I passed 2 dog walking areas like this. And yes, the fencing is intrusive, but I think with the hedging that's proposed, that will be some mitigation. And therefore, I've actually made my decision and I'm coming down in favour of this application, much to my surprise, because having been on the site visit, I thought I was actually going to be really against it, because it is such an open area and it will look a bit intrusive. But, you know, with all the history of the dog problems that people have got now, it is going to be a needed facility for now and in the future. And therefore, I actually would move approval of this application. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. Is that seconded by anybody, please? Councillor David Smith. Do you want to speak? You want?
Yeah. Looking at the officer report and the risk assessment on paragraph 22, it does say that the judgments are subjective, and the risk is at the lower end of the scale. So, and also it does mention that we should be consistent on any new schemes that come forward, but we're also told to treat each case on its merits. So yes, I can understand the need for consistency, but in this case, I don't really see any harm. And I think I would need help on deciding on how we would justify that with an approval. But I do second the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. I was going to say, actually, between the proposer and the seconder, we do need to have material reasons, but I'll give you time to think of those. Councillor Miller-Jones, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm also in support of this. I understand the idea that it's a change to the landscape because, as it says, it's in an exposed location with no other sort of hedge boundaries around. But that is not a good thing. It's an undisputed fact that the loss of our British hedgerows has had a huge negative impact on biodiversity, on climate change. And ecologists are always telling us we need people to bring hedgerows back. We need farmers to replant the hedgerows for the sake of the, biodiversity and the environment. So for us to say, oh no, well, you can't put a hedge up because nobody else has hedges, where does it start? Who's going to be the first person to put a hedge up? I think they need to put a hedge up, and hopefully then the other places around will follow suit. So I am 100% in support on that basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Miller-Jones. Councillor Waldron, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to question the basis of the objection to the fence for a start. if you took dog out of the application and you put pig in, and you put that fence round a field with multiple pig sties and pigs rooting around, would there be a need for an application? I don't think so. The same applies if Bo Peep put a sheep in the field. It wouldn't apply, but as soon as people mention dog, everybody runs around wringing their hands going, oh, somebody's making money. I'm sorry, I have to support this application. Thank you.
Thank you, and in your usual eloquent style, Councillor Waldron. Councillor Ball, please.
No, sorry. I actually was going to second this. I do support it. On the balance at the end there, it said that the hedging was a disbenefit. I found that rather an anomaly. As one of the councillors said, we're being encouraged to put hedging back in the countryside. And I think I can't really see, and it is subjective, and I think the balance comes down to the support of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ball. Councillor Whittam, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think the addition of the hedging in trees in traditionally native stock simply is going to make a very bleak area somewhat like it would have been 50 years ago before all the hedgerows were grubbed out, and I'm very much in favour of these hedgerows. I think it's a very, very much needed facility. It's probably not material, but there is a lot of dogs in compounds and pounds and dog pounds that are fostered out, if you like, to people, and these are unknown dogs, and callback and return can be difficult. So these sort of facilities are very, very much needed, and on a much wider scale than perhaps is apparent on the surface. So I have to say that I'm in favour of approval.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Whittam. Councillor Holder, please.
Oh, I don't have to push. Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's about the fencing. Objections being made about it. Now, I've noticed in Norfolk, when there is a tree planting campaign, I don't know which organisation does it, but they acquire tracts of land off farmers and estates and putting huge hectareage to tree growing. And I noticed this when I was up there, and I asked this chap, so what are these for? Oh, well, I don't know, they're growing trees in there. And there's miles of these fences, and you can see them from the road and all the footpaths, including Peddars Way, which is a major footpath. So presumably they got permission to do this in the open countryside in a huge way for growing trees. Like my colleague behind me said, you can grow pigs and sheep and all the rest of it behind a fence, and trees, obviously, in Norfolk, but not allow your dog to have a walk and be trained and that sort of thing. So I think that's, really defeats that argument about fencing, particularly if we're going to get nice hedges growing up around it. I should actually, at this stage, declare an interest. I'm sorry, Chair, but I'm a dog owner and a dog walker. It seemed to offend my colleague on my left that I admitted I was a golfer on the last application.
That's not accurate.
Anyway, that's all I've got to say. Yeah. And if the mood of the committee is to approve, I would too, unless the officer says we shouldn't on the rules we've been
That's
given.
okay. Thank you. The important thing, Councillor Holder, is it didn't offend me, so that's fine. Who have we got now? Councillor London, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I have taken the liberty of pulling up an ordnance survey map of the area from 1884, and it shows a countryside that is made up of very much smaller parcels of land than we currently see there. Presumably, these lines are designating hedgerows in the area. There's not much more it would have been in 1884, other than the fact that there's actually a windmill very close to the site, which is definitely non-material. So I would like to definitely support this application. if having and I'm looking at it almost from the other way round, which is that if the reintroduction of our lost hedgerows requires the introduction of a dog walking facility, then that is, for my mind at least, an appropriate way of paying for our lost hedgerows to be reintroduced into the area. And that therefore, when we are looking at the language such as local distinctiveness, the character and beauty of the countryside, in my mind, this is entirely in line with our policies in this area, and that is why I am approving for it.
Thank you, Councillor London. And I've got Councillor Hood, then I'm going to just go back to officers and then clarify some matters with the proposer and seconder. Councillor Hood, please.
Okay, thank you. I have a cat, not a dog. But just for transparency, my daughter has a dog. So I'd like to support the officers for the reasons that they have set out as a normal rule, because I think it's very important we protect the countryside. However, as I've made very clear, it's essential that we listen to local members, and it's very clear that this is finding favour with local members. It's very clear that the approach has been to hide the fence with a hedge, and so given that we've been told it's a balance, I think that this is I'm clear I can support this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm also a cat owner as well, not a dog owner. So I'm going to go back to the officers in case there's any points of clarification, and then we might be able to give a steer to the proposer and the seconder. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think there was just one question to pick up, which Councillor Waldron asked about, sort of fields with farm animals in them and fencing around them. There is quite a lot of agricultural permitted development, and there is also forestry permitted development. So that's why you'll see those fences around the place without needing planning permission. I think the other aspect of it is that you wouldn't normally get a car park and visiting members of the public to a pig field or a sheep field. So it's not just the fence, it's the whole use that has created the concern about the impact on the landscape. I think from what everyone's added to the debate and from the proposer and seconder, it does go to the heart of that planning balance slide that we had up, which was there are some economic benefits, there are some ecological benefits. In terms of the recommendation was that those benefits didn't outweigh the landscape harm. Most members have talked about the ecological benefits of the scheme outweighing the landscape harm in this case. I think Councillor Mildmay-White did also talk about the fact that this was an innovative business, so there is an economic benefit. So in terms of any guidance that I could give members on the reasoning, that's a summary of what you've talked about, which is I think that the economic and ecological benefits of this proposal outweigh the landscape harm that you've perceived. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Before I go to Councillor Dicker, can I just check with the proposer and seconder, anything to add to what Rachel has outlined?
I'm on, yes. I think I could possibly add health benefits to this, because there is a huge health benefit to people getting out in the countryside and walking their dogs, and it is difficult in certain areas to do that. So we're encouraging a small rural business. It's innovative in that there isn't anything like that in the area, and the ecological benefits with the hedge will come into play as well. I absolutely agree that it is intrusive in that particular landscape, but if we can go back 200 years on the previous application and find a farm entrance, surely we can go back 200 years and find a hedge that must have been round here at some point then. So it's very subjective, and I appreciate all the work AIM has put into this report. And as I say, when I first went up there, I did think, goodness. But having travelled across the countryside this weekend and seen the solar panel parks that are going up with this huge fencing around it, I passed HS2 with enormous fencing and disruption to the countryside there. This is a tiny little part that will bring benefits to a small business and health benefits to owners and, more importantly, their dogs, really, because if they are shut up, then we know the problems that occur. So get these dogs out and exercised. Thank you. I hope that's enough.
I think Rachel just whispered social and health benefits. Yes. Okay. Councillor David Smith, yes. Is there anything you want to add or?
Just apart from the physical benefit, the health benefits, also the mental health of dog ownership is well recognised. Okay.
Good. Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Dicker, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Covering for very rural villages as I do, my natural position on applications outside of the boundaries is that my default position is always no. I don't want to see any building outside development boundaries, outside villages. I know this area very well. I travel it twice a day, going off to one of my post offices in Fordham, and it is very wide and open. I wouldn't use the word bleak. That is the area we live in, and I wouldn't want to call one of my villages bleak. So, however, on this instance, there is a need for this. I've been speaking to residents in my own village or who'd like something similar like this inside, but we don't have land for it. I would actually preferred it to have been maybe abut the village boundary, because there we have certain exemptions we can play with. It isn't, however, I do feel there is a need for something like this. It is not a permanent structure, and in all honesty, I feel I can support this. The planning balance and the good things that it will bring outweigh the things against the area. So, although I religiously always vote against anything outside of boundaries, I feel I can support this. And I imagine when I leave the building, I'll be struck down. So I'm happy to support it. Thank you.
I think we all wish you well. Okay. It's been proposed by Councillor Mildmay White for approval, and that's been seconded by Councillor Smith, which is contrary to the officer's recommendation. Could I see a show of hands in favour of approving this application, please? Over to you, Christine, for the news.
Thank you, Chair. The vote was unanimous. The application is approved.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, members. Okay, there's an offer of a further comfort break if it's councillors, there's an offer of a further comfort break if required. Yeah, and we say goodbye to Councillor Thorndyke, who thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Thorndyke. Good to see you. No. No one's opting. Okay, no one is indicating they want a further comfort break, so we'll move on. I'm going to have to get a megaphone, I'm sure. Members, you take care, Jim. Right. Charlie, do you want to come forward to one of the desks? Yes. I'll be asking you how to demonstrate the microphones to the members. Right, in the absence of Connor, who is the case officer, Dave Beaton is going to be presenting this application to the committee. Over to you, Dave, when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. Planning permission is sought in this case for a variation to a previous approval for the use of the site for the breeding and keeping of dogs. The matter was first presented to the December 23 committee, at which point it was resolved that the committee was minded to refuse, and the matter was deferred back for this risk assessment report. The reasons given by the committee at that point for their minded to position were the noise and amenity impacts arising from the use. The matter had initially been before the committee following consideration by the delegation panel, and members will also recall that we visited this site prior to, in fact, the November committee, as members were in the area to visit a different site. So permission was originally granted in 2017, and this application now is to vary conditions, and so consideration at this point can only relate to the matters which are now being revised, not in relation to wider matters, for example, the principle of the application. I'll just talk you briefly through the changes that are before us in this application. Again, we have alterations to the stable block on the site. This was always intended for occupation by dogs, but as installed on site has different door and window openings. This will be apparent in the photographs I will take you through, and members on site in November will have seen that. Otherwise, the building itself is in the same position as before. There are alterations to the soft landscaping. Again, the site previously had a mixed species hedge around the exterior. The proposal now is to retain the now planted laurel hedge, and then the substantive change before us are the changes to the number of dogs on site, which was limited to 10 previously, and is now proposed for 20, do beg your pardon. So I'll just talk you through the plans on the screen. We can see the site. Can everyone see my cursor? No, I'll just do that as a laser. There we are. So we can see the site with the round L here, relative to the settlement boundary of Stanton to the north. And then the site is shown in the red triangle associated with the property at Doctors Hall. Land to the north and the east as paddock is also within the ownership of the applicant. Nearest dwelling is to the south, which is Stanton Manor, highlighted with the laser now. This is the northern part of the application site, which includes the access and includes the small car parking area. Evident in this are some of the specimen trees that are proposed, and also the boundary hedging. And again, now the southern part of the site, which shows the kennel buildings to the eastern side of the site, and the stables with enclosed areas inside and external pen areas to the southern boundary of the site itself. This is one of the elevations. Again, members will have seen this on site. This is the kennel block plan, and the amended details as was previously approved for the stable building, and now the alterations to that stable building. Again, the form and position of the building is identical. The only changes are purely elevational. Again, members will recall from the site visit, this is the entrance to the site from Berry Lane. Stanton is behind from where this photograph was taken. This is the entrance, and these are the gates into the wider part of the site. And then a view from the same position, but looking north, back along Berry Lane to Stanton. The site is just to the right-hand side, out of shot, with this area here being the paddock land associated with Doctors Hall. I have some side-by-side photographs. Those on the left are those which were shown before the December committee, and those on the right, taken from a relatively similar position, are those which now indicate the current position on site. What members will note, at the time we visited in December, prior to the December meeting, the fencing around the site was this brown stained timber fencing, which was not of an acoustic specification. What we can now see, and again we can see this being in the centre of the picture, which is also present here, we can now see that this western boundary of the site, since this matter was previously before members, has now been replaced with an acoustic specification fence in accordance with the details that were required under the 2017 approval, and which had, as a matter of breach of planning control, been outstanding since that point. Again, we have a a further photograph, which again shows, I suppose, a before and after the arrangement at the point when members visited the site. We can see the kennel buildings in the background on the eastern boundary, and we can see the southern boundary is a non-acoustic fence. And now we can see these same kennel buildings in the second photograph with the acoustic fence that has now been provided along the southern boundary. And then just another similar arrangement which shows the stable building and the non-acoustic fencing along the western boundary. And now, again, since the site visit and since consideration in December, the acoustic fence that has now been installed in accordance with the previously approved details along the western boundary. What we can also see in this image and in subsequent images is the planting of the landscaping specimen trees that were again required as part of the soft landscaping scheme approved as part of the 2017 permission, and which at the point this matter was previously before members had not been planted. Again, we have 3 further images here, which again show the trees that have subsequently been planted and within the site. Just to refresh members, in relation to the interior of the stable building. Again, this was a position that we went to when we went in November. I have some videos. I can make them play. Sorry?
You might need to come off your laser.
Do beg your pardon, sorry, technical issue here. We'll, Thank you, Rachel, for showing me how to push a button. This is a video of, I'll just play that again. Oh, no, I won't play that again. I pressed the wrong button. That's all going wrong.
You've not been alone today, David.
There we go. And now another video, again, provided, which shows the acoustic fencing along the western boundary of the site. I think this is, yeah, and another one. This one shows the landscaping within the centre of the site that has now been installed in accordance with the approved details from the 2017 permission. Just by way of update in terms of interest from the parish council, but they have maintained, this is the same position as was before the December committee, an objection from the parish council on the basis of concerns relating to the noise from barking dogs. Again, the position remains that we have a single neighbour representation, which is from the dwelling at Stanton Manor, that to the southwest of the site, again, who object on the basis of noise impacts and failure to adhere to planning conditions. Those failures, as we know, being the failure to provide the acoustic fence and the soft landscaping, both of which have been completed since the December committee. No objections from any statutory consultees, notably our public health and housing colleagues. The application itself proposes, includes an updated acoustic report, which has been reviewed as acceptable by public health and housing officers. The outcome of this report is that the building fabric will provide sufficient mitigation against noise from barking dogs. As we have seen, and since the December meeting, the acoustic fence has been upgraded to form an acoustic barrier. The soft landscaping has now also been planted in accordance with the approved details. The physical changes to the site, for example, the changes to the stable block, are largely minor. And of course, the soft landscaping is acceptable, noting that the substantive issue now before the committee are, of course, the acoustic implications arising. This is where there was concern previously. Based on the previous fencing, the non-acoustic specification fencing, the noise report did confirm that there would be noise greater than background levels that was likely to be heard at nearby properties. And this is certainly, in my speculation, what has perhaps led to some of the complaints in relation to this site from noise grounds. However, public health and housing colleagues are satisfied with the now correct installation of the acoustic fence, that any noise emanating from the site will now be lower than current background levels, i.e. the sound of barking dogs will not be audible outside of the site. So for the reasons set out in the risk assessment report before you this morning, officers do not consider that a refusal is justified, nor that it could be defended at appeal. Nonetheless, a reason for refusal is offered should the committee remain so minded. Nonetheless, and subject to the conditions that are set out within the report, the officer recommendation remains one of approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. We've got two registered speakers, Councillor Thorndyke, and that's in the form of a statement which will be read out by Claire. And then we've got Charlie Taylor, who's the applicant. So in that order, Claire, you've got 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. This is the third application on this site for dog breeding. The first was initially objected to by the Parish Council and local residents, but it was approved for 10 breeding bitches. The second was to increase this to 20, but was withdrawn before a decision was made. Now, the third for 20 breeding bitches comes with objections from the Parish Council and local residents, and ahead of a decision on an application for 200 homes just across the lane that was submitted some 4 years ago and is yet to be determined. Complaints have come from local residents about the apparent inability of the applicant to comply with what has been agreed. 20 bitches, not 10. Indeed, your report today is littered with details of non-compliance with conditions, including keeping 20 bitches throughout the period from 2017. In this respect, condition 3 is particularly worrying, given that there have been problems with compliance for around 6 years. Why is there a need to give another 4 months for compliance? I note the threat that non-compliance will see no dogs on site. It appears from the report that non-compliance with conditions has not been a worry to date. I also note at paragraph 25 of the officer's report in working paper 1, it is stated the nature of the business is not one which might ordinarily be capable of taking place within an urban area due to land constraints and amenity implications. These factors add further weight in support to the proposal. From this, I read no regard is being given to the possible urbanisation with 200 houses planned by the developer just across the newly designated quiet lane, and probably more important, the attitude that apparently just anything can be dumped in the countryside. Thank you for listening. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, Claire. And Charlie, you've got 3 minutes to address the committee again.
Hello there. So after the last meeting, obviously, I went back home, obviously put all the fencing and obviously the trees and things like that in, which, like you say, I didn't know, but obviously I've put it all up now. I've done everything that you've asked me to. I've bred dogs for the last 15 years and dogs are my life, and obviously, this is my job, and if I haven't got my dogs, I don't know what else I've got, and I haven't really got a lot else to say about it, but please be kind. That's all I can say, to be honest. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Charlie. Yes, I've thought about that. This is not a matter of conscience. This is a matter of planning. So if members could just bear that one in mind when they are considering their position on this. Councillor London, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think this application, more than any other, has thrown into sharp relief the difference between the material and non-material considerations. It may seem bizarre, but the physical well-being of the puppies at the site is not a material planning consideration, but one for licensing. And as hard as it is, we must put aside some deeply held emotional responses and deal with the matter in hand as it pertains to our role as members of the Development Control Committee. There have been significant improvements to the breeding ground since our site visit, and we can be thankful that there is now some greenery for the dogs and acoustic fencing for the neighbours. Whilst this is entirely non-material, we can be happy that our involvement is already having a positive effect. Entirely separately from material planning considerations, I sense we still have some concerns about the welfare of the dogs. This is not something which is appropriate for the Development Control Committee to have an opinion on, but there are appropriate bodies that we could refer those concerns to. I have been working with my fellow Vice Chair, the Chair, and officers to formalise a process whereby our non-material concerns can be forwarded to a relevant body, thereby enabling us to make a determination on material planning matters without the risk of our judgment being clouded by non-material matters. With this in mind, I can now see no reason why, within the strict guidelines of planning law, we should refuse this application. I propose to grant planning permission. Entirely separately, I ask the Chair to forward our non-material concerns to the Licensing Committee and to explain to us the details of how this new process may operate.
Thank you, John. So that's a formal proposal to
Yes.
approve the application in line with the officer's recommendation.
Yes.
Is that, can I see a seconder, please? I'm going to take Councillor Waldron. Thank you. Did you want to speak at this point, Councillor Waldron? Thank you very much. Okay. Just very briefly, members have always had the opportunity to raise concerns that could be referred to in outside. But let's be the classic one that comes up more regularly than others is highways. So in the context of a member being concerned, the minutes will record that the committee, a member of the committee have concerns. And in this particular case, Council London has raised the issue pertaining to welfare of dogs on site. Democratic Services will keep a log of those concerns. They will email the outside body, non-planning in this case, but that will be copied to myself and the two vice chairs. At some subsequent meeting, when we've got a substantive answer, at the end of the Development and Control Committee meeting, I will give a report back to the committee. For no further debate, but that's the process. When we do our next training session, we'll touch upon this in a little bit more, I can't say detail, I don't think anything else is to say, but to garner some more clarity for members. And that's all it is. So nothing changes. A councillor raises a concern, it gets recorded in the minutes. Back office is Democratic Services will contact the let's call them a third party, and I'll feed back at some point. Okay, so that's the reference. Right, Councillor Whittam, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I fully support what my fellow Vice Chair has said over the referral, so I just wanted that to be known. I can say I am pleased to see that the conditions imposed by the original 2017 approval have finally been started to be complied with, in as much as the acoustic fence and some of the soft landscaping. And I hope that the soft landscaping will be completed. So if this application is approved, I also hope that the applicant will not exceed the 20 breeding bitches, as certainly on the 2017 it would appear that the numbers were exceeded. So on that basis, I'm minded to approve. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whittam. Councillor Bull, please.
Thank you. Going back over this, something came up, and I should possibly have raised it at the first meeting, but looking at the original permission, it was for obviously 10 breeding bitches. We're now talking about 20. To me, the business has therefore doubled. Now, on the original application, there was parking allocated, and it shows 3 cars. If we double the business, is the parking sufficient? And it needs to be off that lane. I lived in Stanton. I know this lane very well. I rented fields for horses up it and used it regularly. It is a dirt track. It's used by riders excessively. You cannot park on it. You need to get off it. I think when we went on the visit, that was very clear. So I am concerned about access. I mean, it is literally just a little single lane dirt track. And another comment I would make, which is probably not entirely relevant, and it is what it is, in the last application, we were concerned about the visual aspect of that fence in the open countryside. And yet here we have this fencing. You can't see through. This was open countryside and it was allowed. It is there. I can't do anything about it, but I would just feel I ought to comment on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Ball. Councillor Miller-Jones, please.
Thank you. At the previous time this came to this committee, I think a lot of members were concerned about the noise pollution, and there was a lot of discussion about how it conflicts with policies DM2 and DM14. I understand that we've been told that that's not the case. It shouldn't be a problem. That is obviously not taking into account the 200 houses, which I believe we can't take into account but to me, it seems slightly bizarre to not be able to take into account something. Well, anyway, never mind, fine, we can't take that into account. Paragraph 135 of the NPPF, it talks about providing a high standard of amenity for existing and future users. I can't see any amenity being provided by this whatsoever. I mean, this is going to lead on to my next point, but it is a depressing and distressing place, which is surely not providing any sort of positive amenity for either humans or dogs, which leads me on to Councillor London said something interesting about deeply held emotional responses. And I've been, obviously, we've all had these concerns and it's not material. And I was trying to think, what is it about this? And it's the deeply held emotional responses. It's not just us. It's the residents. It's the reason the residents are objecting. And I would like to suggest that this actually has a health impact on the local residents, a mental health impact, knowing they're so close to this puppy farm. On the basis of that health impact, I will not be voting for this motion. And should it fail, I will be suggesting a motion to refuse.
Thank you, Councillor Miller-Jones. That's very clear. Thank you very much. Councillor Mulvey-White, please.
Thank you, Chairman. When we had this application before us originally, my main concern was the access too, because that was designated as a quiet lane, I think Berry Lane is, and to increase the business, well, to double the business, you're going to double at least the number of cars coming up and down. So that was my main concern about it, but we were told that highways were happy with it, and therefore I can see no reason to object to this application. Thank you, Chairman.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Mulvey-White. Councillor Ball, you're on my list again.
Yes, sorry, I forgot to say. Also, on the plan at the end, it talks about the parking and that there will be 1 or 2 visits per month, 24 visits per year, with 20 breeding bitches. Minimum, I don't know, 8, you're talking about perhaps 160 puppies. That's 160 people are going to be visiting looking puppies. And that's if only they only have 1 litter a year. I think the traffic on that road is much too much. And I may have missed, I don't see any further highways comments about doubling the business at all. And I have concerns about that lane.
Thank you, Councillor Ball. Councillor Dicker, please.
Oh, so soon. I only just pressed the button. Okay. Bit of a sidetrack, but listening to what the other members have said, and Rachel will know this, that back in Kentford, it was a testing place where we had a lot of cats and dogs, and they were tested, they've tested all the cat food and things like that. Nothing nasty testing, as they didn't like the food. And certain times of the day, we would hear a lot of barking, not meowing, barking. And it kind of was a nice homely thing. And when I lived at the post office there, it was just over the field and there it was. And to me, no one of the residents there ever complained of hearing it all the time or certain parts of the day and everything else like that. And in fact, when unfortunately the company moved to Surrey and we've now got 97 houses there instead, people missed the background noise of this. Going back to actually this application, It seems that I think this committee has done a very, very good job in that the fact that members were minded to refuse it, thus making the applicant go and do a lot of things necessary, which the committee asked. As far as I can see, everything has been complied with. All the statutory consultees are content with what's has happened. Highways are as well. So from what I can see, we have absolutely no evidence to turn this down now. And if it is passed, then I think it shows that we do a good job on here sometimes, getting the applicants to do what they need to do. So I am very happy to support this and things like that. And let's not forget, if there is going to be 200 homes, potentially close by, that's 200 dogs in the gardens barking away as well. So you're never going to get away with animals barking and things like that. So I am happy to support this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dicker. Councillor Sayer, please.
Thank you, Chair. I concur with everything that my colleague has just said. My only concern is, however much acoustic fencing you put up, dogs continually barking can be very, very irritating. Really, I've just got a question. If the size of the breeding bitches doubles and the noise is very persistent, is there any way in the future that if the acoustic barriers are not seen to be working and that continuous pestering dog barking, which I've experienced on holiday when it has been very irritating at night, throughout the night, dogs barking all the time, is there any way that maybe through licensing or anything that the numbers can be reduced again if it does become a problem to people's mental health, because dog barking does carry a long, long, long way.
Thank you, Councillor Sayer. The officers will come back on that point. And finally, before I go to officers, Councillor David Smith, please.
Thank you. I gauge from people's comments that they're in favour of approving this, but I just would like to point out in paragraph 28 of the report, it does say that the scheme is considered to conflict with policies DM2 and DM24 and also the relevant MPPF provisions. So, yeah, we have got grounds there if we need to refuse it. But if we do approve it, I just want to point out a bit about the landscaping and saying about if anything, any trees die within 5 years, whatever, they should be replaced. Why are we limited to 5 years? Surely all the time that there's this business here, that we should have those trees there all the time. So what happens after 5 years? Just a barren landscape? Is that what we're saying? It says, unless the planning authority gives consent for variation. Why would we vary that condition? There's also something was concerning me. The dates in 7 and 8, the conditions, one says 6 months and one says 4 months. I wondered why there was a difference in those two. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Right, I go back to officers. Who wants to lead off on this? Dave? Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. I will just go through the points that I've noted in the turn that I noted them. Councillor Bull was the first question I noted in terms of whether or not the car parking area was sufficient, which is now shown on the screen. 3 designated spaces, the gated access into the site, and of course some potential for some informal spaces. Certainly we have no objection, as has been noted from the County Council's Highway Authority. The view of officers, and whilst I don't have a figure on the number and magnitude and frequency of visits, certainly the view of officers is that the intensity of that use and the number of visits is at the more moderate end of the spectrum, and that the site plan on the screen before us is sufficient to cater for the magnitude of the uses of the visits that are expected otherwise. Councillor Bull also raised concern about the visual impacts of the fence. The fencing, of course, has previously been approved and is simply being installed in accordance with that previous approval. The plans, as you can see again from the screen, do show soft landscaping outside the boundary fence line, again, which will serve to screen and soften views across and in the countryside of that fencing. Councillor Miller-Jones raised concerns which I just reiterate are not material to the assessment of the application in terms of the depressing and distressing, I think was the term used, place for dogs. Just to explain as well, since this matter was raised, I believe, with the licensing team following the inspection in our site visit, I beg your pardon, in November, the licensing team have inspected the site and have confirmed that it does satisfy the terms of the licence. Again, Councillor Ball, comments in relation to the parking I've just covered. Councillor Sayer raised comments in relation to the number of dogs potentially doubling on site, and then concerns about if the noise barrier doesn't work, is there action that can be taken? The noise barrier is expected to work. If it's installed in accordance with the specifications and details, then our public health and housing team have told us that the noise will not be audible outside of the site. If for whatever reason that is not the case, then it may be a breach of the planning control in that they haven't installed the fencing in accordance with those specifications, or it may be that if there is nuisance otherwise, then our public health and housing team do have powers under their own legislation in order to address that. And then I think the final note I made was Councillor David Smith in relation to landscaping typically being approved for 5 years. There are two reasons that I understand that is typically the case. The first of which is 5 years is normally enough for soft landscaping to establish itself over a number of planting seasons, and for replacement planting to be provided otherwise if it fails within that time frame. And of course it offers opportunity for local planning authorities, if they wish, to impose tree preservation orders, as they're able to do, on individual trees in order to protect them in the longer term. Thank you.
Is there anything to add to that, Rachel?
Bear with me a second.
Okay, I'm just going to bear with Rachel. Hold on.
Sorry, just bear with us. I'm just checking. There isn't any inconsistency. They're not matters that necessarily have to be dealt with together. 6 months simply requires the completion of the works to have been verified on site by a specialist noise consultant, and the noise management plan is required within 4 months. If members were so minded, both of those could take place within 4 months. Again, there is no inconsistency between the two. They're not matters that one follows the other or have to take place together.
Thanks, Dave. Did the proposer and seconder want to address that inconsistency or just leave it as is? Because I think I'm reassured by Dave's explanation. No. Okay, that's fine. We'll leave it as. Right, we've had final officer responses. There are no other members wishing to speak. So let's test where the committee's opinion lies. It's been proposed by Councillor London for approval in line with the officer's recommendation of approval, and was seconded by Councillor Waldron. So could I see a show of hands in favour of approving this application, please? And those against, please? And I guess there are abstentions. 2 abstentions. Okay. Oh, Jim's left over here. Jim's gone. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. So that's 10 votes in favour, 2 against, and with 2 abstentions. So the motion is carried and the application is approved.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Yeah, we move on to the next item, but before that, I must, as a matter of comfort break. Yes. Thank you. Bury Cemetery, which was the subject of a site visit on Monday. Connor is the case opposite, but Dave is presenting in his absence. So over to you, Dave.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon this time, members. Permission is it's not yet shown on the screen.
Oh, Lewis, can you put the slideshow up, please? Thank you.
There we are. I'll start again. Permission is sought for the erection of a first floor, two-bedroom flat above the existing ground floor restaurant. The application is referred to the Development Control Committee following consideration at the delegation panel. The matter was before the delegation panel at the request of Councillor Wakelam. The Town Council object to the application. Just to clarify, over and above the indication in today's report, but the 2019 planning permission for a one-bedroom flat at first floor level is not extant. Despite there having been indications previously from the applicant that it was approved in 2020 and without being implemented within 3 years, it has now lapsed. This is largely moot, of course, since that element forms part of the current proposal, albeit now with the addition of the flat roof side element. Just one further update as well is that we have received further comments from the Georgian Society that are not either summarised in the report nor included within the late paper. And I'll just read out the summary of that, which is, whilst the group has no objection in principle to discreetly extending the building, the proposed addition is still a relatively large structure in comparison to the host building and other adjacent heritage assets. Through its scale and massing, it will dominate these historic structures, causing harm to their setting and to the surrounding conservation area. The group must regretfully again recommend that the applicant withdraws their proposals until a less harmful scheme can be formulated. If the applicant is unwilling to do so, then consent should be refused for this development. Those are the comments from the Georgian Society. Members, of course, I trust will have a good knowledge of this site following the site visit on Monday. But just to talk you through the plans itself, this is the site outlined in red, located to the south of Risbygate Street. We have first floor plans associated with the previous 2019 and now no longer extant approval, which shows the one-bedroom flat at first floor level, accessed out of an external door across the flat roof and then back in. This is all of current flat roof ground floor restaurant extension that was built around about 5 years ago. This gives you a better indication of that existing and current arrangement. So this is the flat-roofed ground floor restaurant extension, which, again, members who were on site will note is not visible in the slightest from outside of the site, because the site is surrounded by a relatively high wall and was therefore considered acceptable in heritage terms when it was approved and built. What we can see on the right-hand side is the previous approval, no longer extant, but from 2020, for the one-bedroomed flatted accommodation with a pitched roof, reflecting, if not completely matching, the existing arrangement of gables and pitched roofs on the rear of the building. This is the proposed floor plan, so we can see similar to that which was previously approved. We have this element here, which is in the same footprint.
Your laser's not on.
Sorry, thank you, Rachel. My laser pen is not on. There we go. Thank you. Sorry, I'll just start that section again. We have this element on the left-hand side of the flat-roofed area, as we see on this plan, which includes the area that which was previously containing the single-bedroom flat, and now we have this additional element on the other section of the flat roof, which now proposes in totality a larger unit of accommodation, 2 bedrooms. And just to note, it is proposed as manager's accommodation for the owner of the business to occupy. So these are now the current proposed rear elevations. So we have the section of that pitched roof element, which had previously obtained planning permission, albeit has not been implemented. And we now also see the current proposed extension to that element, which is the flat-roofed section within the centre of the site. And then the next plan shows an elevation. So this is the neighbouring dwelling. Members will see saw on site beyond the rear wall of the restaurant business. This is the pitched roof element, which is identical to that which was previously approved. And this is the fairly deep flat roofed element, which at first floor level, in effect, creates the impression of a two-storey flat roof extension to the rear of the listed building. We have one further elevation. This is taken or shown positioned immediately behind the building itself. If members can imagine where the extract flue was positioned, this is an elevation looking out towards the rear of the site, which shows the pitched roof first floor extension, identical to that which was previously approved, and then of course the flat roof side element to the right hand side. So some pictures and videos I will just take you through now. So this is the site in question, the 3-storey cream building. This is the entrance to the restaurant here, and this is the entrance to the first floor where we entered and then went up the stairs to the rear of the site. This is a view from the rear of the site, excuse me, which gives you an idea of the limited visibility, in particular of the ground floor restaurant element. What we can see are the 3 gables at the rear of the listed building, and again, just in this position here, the extract flue. The next photograph is taken from a very similar position, but just shows the dwelling to or to the rear of the restaurant site. And then we have a photograph taken from on the flat roof itself, which shows the gable end of the neighbouring dwelling. We can see the Arc retail shopping centre on the right hand side here, a very small courtyard at the rear. And then a further image looking back towards the rear of the existing listed building, including all 3 of the second floor rear projecting gables. I have a site video. It just pans round from the car park and shows the building itself and then the dwelling on the right hand side. And then there is also a video from the flat roof itself. We can see the very small rear courtyard behind the flat roofed ground floor restaurant extension. Again, subservient to the scale of the wall. That's the gable end of the neighbouring dwelling. And then we pan round further to show the rear of the existing listed building, and then the retaining wall on the right hand side. So just in this position here, if members can see, these 2 would appear to be air conditioning units. The pitched roof element of the structure will be positioned in this location, with the flat roofed element over to the left hand side. In terms of wider comments received in relation to this application, you'll note I've summarised the latest comments received from the Georgian Society. Again, we have comments from the Conservation Officer that consider them unable to support what in effect is a 2-storey flat roof extension to the rear of the property. This raises concerns in relation to the listed building due to its inappropriate design, which fails to relate to the dual pitch roofs of the host building. The NPPF makes it clear that any harm to or loss of the significance of a designated heritage asset from either its alteration or its destruction, or from development within its setting, should require a clear and convincing justification. There has been consent granted previously for a unit of manager's accommodation at the property. This is no longer extant, but it was approved as recently as 2020, and this is reasonable to assume that permission would again be granted if it were to be applied for, noting the very recent nature of that approval. In this case, a clear and convincing justification for the construction of a structure of this harmful design, scale and massing has not been provided, and the proposal is therefore contrary to the provisions of DM15 and also DM17. There are comments displayed on the screen from Councillor Wakelam, who I understand is going to address you presently, but nonetheless, because of the harm identified to the heritage asset, the recommendation is one of refusal. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Dave. And you're quite right. We only got one registered speaker. That's Councillor Julia Wakelam. So you have 3 minutes, Councillor Wakelam.
Thank you, Chair. The applicant is ill, so he apologises for not being here. He's got some stomach bug or something. Not a good thing if you're running a restaurant. Generally, I would always support a conservation officer, particularly when it comes to dealing with the town centre of Bury St Edmunds, which is, as we all know, a jewel in the crown. However, here, I think that there is justification for going against her recommendation of refusal. And the reason I say that is because she refers, or sorry, the officers refer to NPPF paragraph 208. This is at paragraph 31 of your papers. That where a development proposal will lead to less than substantial harm to the significance of a designated heritage asset, this harm should be weighed against the public benefits of the proposal. Now, I would say that this proposal is less than substantial. This is a building that's been altered over the years. It's constrained in its site. It's not readily visible from outside the building. It doesn't hugely impact on the area. The officer refers here to the 2016 application. I actually was on the development committee then, and I was wholly in favour of turning that application down because it was excessive, and I couldn't access the planning inspector's appeal that's referred to in this paragraph, but I'm sure his reasons were entirely right. This proposal is far smaller than this. You will have noticed from the public portal, that the planning portal, that he has reduced in scale his proposals. The Victorian Society have now said that they're content with it. I accept that the Georgian Society has not, Georgian Group has not. But I also feel that we've referenced the NPPF paragraph 208, but importantly, NPPF 86, planning policy should, and there's several sub-paragraphs, seek to address potential barriers to investment such as inadequate infrastructure services or housing or a poor environment, and D, be flexible enough to accommodate needs not anticipated in the plan, allow for new and flexible working practices such as live-work accommodation, and to enable a rapid response to changes in economic circumstances. And of course, that aspiration of NPPF is reflected in BV1, which is still our current policy until the new local plan is adopted. Mr. Gotetki, I do have problems with pronouncing his name, I'm afraid, wishes to live in this extension with his family. We all know that since 2016...
Julia, I'm very, very sorry, but you'd be surprised how you've got...
I am. Can I just have one quick... Given that the applicant isn't here...
I shall acquiesce to your polite request.
Thank you. Economic circumstances have changed. Housing prices are unaffordable for many people. Profit margins for businesses are limited. And I think we should be encouraging businesses. I don't know if any of you have ever eaten in this restaurant. It's very good. I don't eat meat, but my husband says the lamb is delicious. I think we should support this purely to ensure that this business can continue, be successful, and it is an extension on a listed building, but I would maintain it's not that intrusive. And in this case, the public benefit outweighs the conservation issues. So I urge you to approve this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. Can we get the last slide of the application actually back on the screen, please? Yes. Thank you. Okay, who have we got? Councillor Waldron, please.
Thank you, Chair. I understand Julia's arguments about approving it, but as it stands, I can't even consider approving it because any flat roof extension always strikes me as a cheap option. If it was properly designed, had an apex roof and fitted in with the surrounds, I would have no problem with it. But as it is, chuck a roof on it, that'll do. Sorry, not in a conservation area. Thank you, Chair.
There's no proposal there at the moment, is there? No, you listen to the debate. That's fine. Councillor Laura Miller-Jones, please.
Thank you very much. So if I hadn't seen it, based on this, I would probably lean towards refusal. But having seen it, it's not visible. It's not at all domineering. You know, it's a very low roof with very high roofs all around it. It's not really visible from anywhere. You know, you might see an edge of it from one place, but barely at all. And considering there's already a building approved there, I understand the thing about the flat roof. I don't like flat roof buildings, though they are better for the environment. They're much more energy efficient. So there is that. But yeah, they're not very pretty. But the fact is that you can't see it. So I don't see why there is any harm. Obviously, the whole conservation of the building itself, I would understand if they weren't already building something else onto it. But since they're already adding something, I don't see the harm in adding a little bit more. So I would actually like to propose approval, please.
Okay, I'll just make a note of that. And could I see if there's a seconder for approval, please? Councillor Holder, would you like to speak at this point?
Only briefly, Chair, you'd be pleased to know. I was really taken by the view looking at the back of that building as it stands now, and it's a complete mess, a right hodgepodge. And okay, this particular extension is not going to enhance that hodgepodge, but I don't think it's going to detract from it either. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holder. Okay, Councillor Whittam, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah. Now, what my comment might be a non-material planning issue, but from looking at the designs and having gone on the site visit, I think any extension on that flat roof could be a dangerous proposition because of there is no effective fire escape. Apart from that very narrow, very steep set of stairs up. And on that basis, I'm quite concerned. And I would agree with Councillor Holder about the state of the place currently, but that doesn't persuade me to be in favour of this.
Thank you, Councillor Whittam. Councillor London, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I have a grab bag of comments on this one, I'm afraid. First of all, paragraph 46, which is talking about the fact that as there is no parking spaces or cycle spaces, this project won't reliably encourage the use of sustainable forms of transport. I agree it won't encourage sustainable transport by entirely obviating the requirement for a journey to be made in the first place. So I think it's a little bit disingenuous to put that, and it does actually say that this weighs against it in that paragraph. I think that's a little bit disingenuous, seeing as the gentleman will be living and working in the same building, and that I would assume that if this were to go through, that there would be a condition that the occupancy of this flat is tied to the restaurant and that it wouldn't be used as an independently rentable accommodation. Secondly, I note that there won't actually be any increase in the flat roof space in the area. In fact, there will be a small reduction in the amount of flat space in the area. And I also note that if, as we were standing on that roof and we were looking around in a circle, I could see over 250 years of development, of buildings, of adding on everything from, buildings from the 1750s, you could see parts of structures of poking through, all the way through to stuff that was built in the last 10 years. And it seems that in the balance of the consideration that to say that no, we have now reached perfection and that this is the moment that we will stop this continuous process at the disbenefit of the people that are using the facilities and that are living there and trying to run there seems a little bit odd to me. The final point that I'd like to ask is, and if I could ask the officer to, Dave, could you just go back to the image where we can see from the outside when you're standing in the car park? Yep, go back on. Thank you, that one there. As far as I can tell, I've just had a look on Google Street Maps, and on the side of the building that we can see there is some big red notices saying this is private property. So the view from this point, it is accessible to members of the public, but there are warning signs saying that it's private property, and that the proposed extension at the back would be even less visible from the public highway as opposed to the accessible private property. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor London. And Councillor Mildmay White, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I can only conclude that I agree with our Conservation Officer and the Georgian Society group, because to me, having gone up and done a site visit, there's a huge amount of repair needed to the actual original building from what I could see, never mind adding another one to it. And I too had concerns about no comment from a fire officer, given that it's a flat above a restaurant with a kitchen and one thing another. I was surprised by that. And nothing from where people are going to put their bins out from this flat. Is that just going to sit on Risbygate Street? I mean, normally we do have some comment about where you're going to put bins. You know, you're talking about a flat with 2 bedrooms. That could be 2 children, 2 adults. There's going to be quite a lot of domestic rubbish coming out. Maybe it can be added to the restaurant one, I don't know. But anyway, in total, I absolutely agree with our Conservation Officer and the Georgian Society. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Mildmay White. Councillor Hood, please.
Yes, thank you. So we've got a very clear officer recommendation, but we've obviously got a suggestion from the local councillor, whom I would normally support, that this isn't that bad. But what I don't really understand is, you know, why, when in paragraph 33 it says particularly its flat roof design being in conflict with a steeply pitched roof, it is possible to put in a design that is acceptable. I feel very, very strongly that we need to respect our cultural heritage. And whereas I hear what you say, I'm disappointed not to be able to support it, but I think it is, you know, there is no reason why something in keeping couldn't be put in, and we should be respecting our cultural heritage. So I'm finding it difficult to support this. But actually, I do think the officer recommendation is very clear, and the other representations are very clear, and that makes it easier to understand the officer's approach.
Thank you, Councillor Hood. Councillor Sayer, please.
Does it? Right, it's come on, thank you. Yes, I completely agree with what my 2 previous councillors have said about the fire access and all those sort of things. But what worries me about it being above the restaurant as well for the fire access and the bins is the state of the existing building, which is absolutely appalling. And why are we building more accommodation? Are the floors above the restaurant in the existing building not occupied? Are they not available for accommodation for the manager? I believe there's at least a first floor, maybe even more, for the manager to live in, and in which case his money could be spent on improvements to the interior of the existing building and the exterior, which is in an appalling state. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sayer. Whilst I'm not going to disagree with you. I mean, that's not part of this planning application, you know, in terms of options. Right. Councillor David Smith, please.
Thank you. Yeah. Whilst I agree with the need to retain our heritage sites and whatever, but we have to make these sites, if they're to be viable, we have to make them suitable for the modern age. And if by adding something at the back, which is not particularly visible to anybody else, makes that property viable, then I think we should be looking to do that on these sort of applications. So I would have no problem in supporting the application.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Right, officers ready to address. Dave, are you? Yeah, Dave's going to come back initially.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, usual practice. I'll just go through the notes that I've made. I think the first, which was from Councillor Whittam in relation to the lack of a fire escape, which is, of course, a building regulations, building control matter, rather than a material planning consideration. Council London made comments about the public visibility of the site, and I certainly concede that it's perhaps not as helpful as it could be that the photographs that I've got are taken from an area of a parking space available adjacent to the highway. The site is visible in views from the pedestrian stroke road access down from the Arc car park to Risbygate Street. There are no places for bins, of course. The site has no external area, and the building itself presents directly onto Risbygate Street. If the matter were approved, of course, a refuse strategy could, of course, be conditioned as a consequence of that. Councillor Sayer made comments about the state of the existing building, which it was noted were not necessarily material. My understanding is the first and second floors of the building are in residential use, and that, of course, action in the normal manner can be taken against listed buildings that are not in notices can be served to require them to be made up to a particular standard in order to secure maintenance otherwise to those. I think that's it for my notes.
And Chair, I just wanted to draw the committee's attention to paragraph 27 on page 94, which talks about the local planning authority's duty. And it's, I would say, in this respect, it's threefold. You've got the impact of the proposed development on the historic and architectural interests of the building itself. You've got the impact on the setting of the listed building, but you've also got the impact on the character and appearance of the conservation area. And there's been some discussion about how visible the back of this building is. Case law has established that it doesn't actually have to be visible publicly visible to have an impact on the setting or the character and appearance of the conservation area. So I think even if you couldn't see this proposal from anywhere within the public realm, there is still that intrinsic harm that's been picked up by the conservation officer and the Georgian group in terms of the impact on the fabric of the building and on the setting of the listed building itself and the conservation area. So it's just to point that point out. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Councillor London, please.
Thank you, Chair. Couple of questions. I heard that the Victorian Society is happy with this proposal. I'd just like to confirm that if we are aware of that's correct or not. And the other thing that I was going to mention is with regards to the parlour state of the existing roof of a listed building. If members are upset with something that is non-material, we do now have a process for you to find out about that if you wish to do so.
Yeah. Yes, we do. I don't think we need to invoke in this particular case. Can you just respond on the Georgian Society's view?
Victorian.
Sorry, did I say Georgian? Victorian, sorry.
Yes, I can. And what members may have noted from the report is that when initially submitted, the application included a two-storey element on top of the existing ground floor. So in effect, a first and second floor extension. And the comments that the Victorian Society raised initially were simply on the basis of the lack of the heritage assessment, and then subsequent comments that were in relation to that considerably more dramatic extension, a 3.5-storey extension on the rear. The final comments dated the 15th of September are are otherwise relatively neutral. This has addressed any concerns we have with the scale of the proposed development and simply wish to make no further comments on the application. Just as an aside, but as members will probably note from the extremely extensive planning history to this site, this is a site that officers have spent many years trying to support the applicant in their aspiration to not only develop the business but to provide accommodation at the business for their own needs. And again, the principle has been established that there has been permission granted for residential accommodation at this. The issue before us really isn't the principle of supporting the business. It's the form and nature that those extensions will take, and that's, despite the efforts that we've gone to try and guide the applicant here, to try and support his aspirations and to try and get the right balance between extending the property, providing space for him to live, supporting the business. The issue really before us is the form and design and appearance of what we've now got, which, because of its elevated position, is certainly in the strong view of the Conservation Officer and, as you've heard, the view of the Georgian Society, inappropriate. And as much as we would have loved to have continued to negotiate with the applicant to try and provide something else, ultimately this is what they've decided. So we've felt we're left with no choice but to recommend refusal.
Thank you, Dave. Councillor Hood.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry to interrupting, but could the officers just confirm that it would actually be possible for something in keeping to be designed, as opposed to what we have got here, which has been objected to by them and the other?
Thank you, Councillor Hood. I think you'll be able to do that, Dave, yes?
The devil is in the detail, of course. The issue before us is not the principle of developing at first floor level. It's not the principle of providing accommodation to support the owner's aspiration to live at the site. The proof is clearly before you in the papers that we have done that as an authority. Very recently, the applicant has chosen not to implement that planning permission, which is their right not to do so. Something of an appropriate form is possible, but it's not, in the view of officers, what we've got before us at the moment. Yes.
Thank you for that. Right. One thing, I just need to go back to the proposer and seconder in terms of what your actual reason, what your material planning reasons are for proposing a contrary motion to the officer's recommendation. So, Councillor Miller-Jones, can you give me a steer?
I can certainly try. It was basically that I didn't believe that it went against those policies based on the fact that it is not very visible, and the fact that there's already an approved building there, which means the thing about, I can't remember what it's called, the building itself, I'm not on the right page, but the thing where it talks about affecting the actual building, I don't believe that applies if we're already having a new building put on there in the first place. So it was just on that grounds, really, and maybe that's not appropriate, in which case I can withdraw.
Thank you for that, Councillor Miller-Jones. Councillor Holder, did you want to contribute in any way?
That it doesn't, in my view, it's a conflict of views that doesn't actually harm the setting of a listed building as stated by the Conservation Officer. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Holder. So because this is a contrary proposal, I'm going to invite Rachel to comment on the basis of those reasons what her approach would be in the context of the decision-making protocol. Please, Rachel.
Thank you, Chair. I think on that basis and bearing in mind the duty that we have under the Listed Buildings and Conservation Areas Planning Act, I would look to invoke the decision-making protocol. So this would be a minded to vote, and then it would be, if the motion is successful, it would then be deferred for a risk assessment report.
Thank you, Rachel. Clear understanding there. So there's no one else wishing to speak at the moment. So based on Rachel's guidance, this will now be a minded to approve, and that was proposed by Councillor Miller-Jones and seconded by Councillor Holden. That's minded to approve, which is contrary to the officer's recommendation of refusal. So could I see a show of hands in favour of the refusal, please? I'm getting tired, councillors. Yeah, I should have took a comfort break. Yeah, approve. Yes, yeah. Approval, not refusal. And a show of hands in favour against the motion for approval, please. And is an abstention?
So that's 11 votes in favour of the motion, 3 against. No, sorry. No, it's me. It's catching. It's catching. So I was going from, I was reading from the wrong side of the page. Right, so that's 3 votes in favour, 11 against and 1 abstention. So the motion is lost.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. So the Councillor Dicker.
The button. Yeah, I'd like to propose refusal.
And is that seconded? Councillor Whittam. Is there anybody wishing to speak on this, or should we just go straight to the vote? Right, so Councillor Dicker has proposed refusal, seconded by Councillor Whittam, in line with the officer's recommendation of refusal. Can I see a show of hands in favour of refusal, please? Those against that proposal? And 1 abstention. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So that's 11 votes in favour, 3 against, 1 abstention. So the application is refused.
Thank you very much indeed, members. That closes the meeting. Councillor Miller-Jones. Councillor Miller-Jones, did you want to